years ago, I was leaving my guitar lessons teacher's house, Vicky, and the person coming in was Kelly, following me. And of course, Kelly actually did worship at the men's breakfast years ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
I never advanced that far, but that wasn't one of my talents or gifts. But, our speaker today is Kelly, and Kelly just has a heart for apologetics. He debates atheists on YouTube, agnostics. He set up booths at the market nights and invited people there to talk and share. And even, I think he even has discussions with well-known Christian apologists as well. He and Jay Ward have a Defending Your Faith Bible study every second Saturday of the month here at church at 10 o'clock, room 215. I've been blessed to attend that. Sometimes Dirk is our worship leader, but sometimes he fills in for Kelly. And as well as Daniel's the sort of the audio-visual guy of the study. So that's something that if you've never attended it, I think you'll really enjoy it, get some stuff out of it. And they're always talking about different subjects. Kelly's a natural-born leader. He's not so good on the planning side. He's good at leading a group. We went to Israel in 2019. Most of the Bible study on Thursday night went in. That was quite a trip, 17 days in Israel. Kelly, when anything happened, we all looked at Kelly to fix it. So I'm interested in seeing what Kelly is going to talk about this morning, maybe share a little bit about how he became a believer in Christ and some of the facets of his ministry. So, Kelly?
Sure. I'm going to save that till the end so you like what I have to say, guys. Let's start in prayer. I thank you, Father, for this time together with my brothers. Lord, I just pray that you would give us your spirit, Father, today, and just let it inhabit us today, Father, and just allow us to hear what you have to say and use my mouth to give what you want out. I thank you, Father, and pray these in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. So I thought I'd start out with a story about prayer. I was reading this recently. There was this kid, and his birthday was coming up, and he wanted a 10-speed. He wanted a bicycle real bad because he didn't have a new one. He wanted one. So he figured he was going to church. It was a church-going family. So he had heard that Jesus answers prayers. So he figured, okay, I'm going to kneel down tonight, and we're going to talk. So he gets down on his knees. He says, Jesus, I know you're listening to me. I know you hear all my prayers, and I'd like to have a bicycle for my birthday. And if you could, just leave it at the front door when I get up. So he wakes up the next morning, walks out the door, no bicycle. So he's a little confused. He said, okay, maybe I didn't do this right. So he goes on to TV on this TV evangelist that he just talks to every once in a while. And he said he found out that he was supposed to expect to have the bicycle there when he was praying. He was expecting to have that there. So he got up the next morning, or he went to bed that night, prayed, figured, sure, okay, I fully expect Jesus to answer my prayer. So he gets up the next morning, opens the door, no bicycle. He said, okay, I don't understand this. So he remembers this other program that he watched, and he said, okay, maybe I did this wrong. I'm going to try this one over here. So they were telling him that God's a very specific God, and you have to name what it is you want exactly and precisely. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. So he said, okay, that's why I did wrong. So he gets up he goes to bed that night, and he prays, okay, I want a Ali 15-speed bicycle with carbon fiber and the shoes to go along with it and the parts on the pedals so I can go a lot faster and I can beat people in the speed. Okay, for sure, this is going to work. Gets up the next morning, goes out, opens the door, and still no bicycle. Said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing now. But there's this kid down the street. He goes to a different church. So I'm going to go down and see what he has to say. So he goes down there, asks them if they can play that morning with his son. And while he's there, he notices they have a statue of Mary sitting on the table. So when nobody's looking, he picks up the statue, puts it in his pocket, gets done playing, and goes home. That night, gets down and prayed and says, Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again. So anyway, that's my joke for the day. So what I'm going to talk about today is there's three parts. There's lost and blind, broken, and repair, along with fiery darts. So I guess we'll start off at the beginning. I was born on January 8th, 1956, and that might not seem like a big day to most of you, but those here with mission aviation experience know that date very well. It's a date that Jim Elliot and his buddies were trying to get this tribe in Ecuador, Aka tribe, to understand that Christ loves them. So they had their experiences with them, tried to talk with them. They had a plane that they would fly in circles and try to drop things down to them so these people would understand that these people loved them. So they finally got the portion where they could land somewhere near their tribe and land their airplane, him and his buddies, four of them, land their airplane and actually be able to talk to the Akas, because they had discovered a little bit of their language from a lady that had escaped from them and had been teaching them a little bit of their language. So they came out, the girls came out at first, they talked a little bit, they went back in and they discovered that these guys, they decided these guys were enemies and all they wanted to do was eat them. They figured they were cannibals that were talking about us. So at that point, the movie that you might want to see is called End of the Spear, and it tells this story. But these 5 evangelists got the fiery darts that we hear about in the Bible. These 5 evangelists experienced that firsthand. All 5 of them were killed by the Akas. The Akas, in the tribes around them, they called them the Akas because they were savages. That was their word for savages. And they say that because I do see that in our lives, that we have times when we have fiery darts thrown at us. It might be spears. These guys died from them. But some of the fiery darts are just what we get when we're trying to do what God wants us to do. We get fiery darts sent at us. So that's kind of where I went from on that part. But to tell you a little bit about myself, just the BC part. Not too proud of that, but I'll tell you about it anyway. So I was born in Kansas. My parents moved to Chula Vista and then to Orange County. But I never really had any problems. My parents stayed married the whole time I was alive, or the whole time they were alive. I'm still alive. And I had a pretty good upbringing. No problems, really. There was no real issues. My mom and dad both worked, so I had pretty much whatever I wanted. I didn't get a bicycle praying for it, but all the rest of it I got. So I didn't really have any problems, although there was one thing missing. My family was not a Christian family. I remember going to church one time because a lady invited my mom to go to church with her, and she had a son about my age. So we went to church. I hated it because I had to put on a suit. But as I was sitting there, they were talking about this Jesus guy. I didn't really pay that much attention until they came down to the point where they did an altar call. They did an altar call, and this kid that was sitting next to me, about my same age, he turned to me and he said, if you want to go down there, I'll go with you. And no, I don't want to go. I don't even know what they're talking about. What's an altar call? Forget it. Leave me alone. We didn't go much to church because my dad had this idea that if you went to church, all they wanted to do was punch somebody in the mouth. So our church days were pretty limited. So as far as growing up goes, I had a pretty decent childhood, but as I went into teenage years, I started drinking quite a bit, and that was kind of my life of hanging out at bars and doing everything else that goes along with hanging out at bars, sleeping around, all the rest of it. But to kind of explain to you where I was with God at the time, if you would ask me, I said, yeah, there's a God, but I would have no idea who he was. I was probably what you'd call agnostic. But I got into hockey, ice hockey and street hockey. I'm telling you that because there's a part of this that I'm not very proud of, but I'll tell you about it anyway. I was running the street hockey league that I played in. I was running it. Not very well, but I was running it. And there happened to be this team that came into this league. They were Christians. I didn't like that very much because I didn't like Christians very much. So we were playing hockey and this and that, and I decided that at that point, I went to see the Exorcist movie. I don't know how many of you guys have seen that before. That movie scared me to death. I was sure that when I got home, the bed was going to start bouncing around and I was going to freak out. But anyway, the other thing that I did learn was the Christians didn't like this movie about this number that they had. And the Christians didn't like that. And I didn't particularly like Christians at that point. And I imagine you guys know about this, but that number is 666. I had no idea what that meant. So me putting it on my jersey that I played on the hockey team with, I had no idea what that actually meant. So it's not like I agreed to it. I had no clue what it meant. I just knew Christians didn't like it. So I took my hockey jersey, I put the 666 on the back of my jersey, and I went and played against them. And these guys were okay with it. They didn't really come over and punch me or check me or do anything that I would expect them to do. They're actually pretty nice. But that was my condition. That's where I was at. Lost and blind. That's where I was, is lost and blind. At that point, I had gotten married twice at that point. Been married 4 times now, but I've been married twice at that point. And my second wife, we had a little girl. It's going to get tough. So anyway, this little girl, her name was Kelly as well. And she started going to church with my sister-in-law and my niece. And one day in February, it's going to get difficult now. One day in February of 1999, riding home from work, and out of the blue, she says, "Daddy," sorry guys, "Jesus is the most important person in my life." I said, "What? That's my spot. That's me. That's where I belong. Because after all, I am your dad. And if I had something in my life that was God at that point, it was her." So when she told me that, this was quite a shock to me. I wasn't ready for that at all. I asked her, I said, "Well, you love your dad, don't you?" Of course, I was supposed to be before this Jesus guy that she's talking about. She said, "Yeah, of course I do. I love you very much, Dad." So that was February of 1999. And on March 7th of 1999, I was sitting in my brother's living room, and Kelly came up and asked me if I'd go to church with her. That's not something you could have drugged me into doing at that point. And then, it's going to get tough now. On March 9th of 1999, that's when brokenness happened. A lot of people say that until you've been broken, you can't serve God. Sorry, guys, it's emotional. So anyway, March 9th, 1999, I drove out to 29 Palms for an insurance appointment. I'm an insurance agent. And on the way back, we got to a little town called Joshua's Tree. And a drunk driver made a left turn in front of me. And my daughter didn't survive that accident. So at the scene, there was a restaurant that was right there, and some people came out when they heard the crash. I was looking down. This guy turned in front of me. I didn't even hit my brakes, so you can imagine how much noise that made. So anyway, this lady came out and started trying to help. She had Kelly on the ground, trying to revive her. She had a pulse still. And the ambulance finally got there and put Kelly in the ambulance. And I say, you're not taking my daughter anywhere without me. So I got in the ambulance as well. But you can't have me in the ambulance. They had too much stuff going on. So the sheriffs came over and got me out of the ambulance. And at that point, I started praying to God to take me instead. And I said it over and over and over again. One of the sheriffs finally told me that God's listening. Now that might seem like kind of an odd prayer request or prayer to God to take him. It's skipping my mind now what that is. Might not seem like a good testimony or request for God to take me, but he did. He took me. So broken. I was very, very broken at that point. My life ended at that point. So it came to the point where I was going to do one of two things. I was going to drink myself to death. I was going to find out who this Jesus person was, because at the funeral, I repeated what Kelly had said to me. And there was a lot of people in the crowd that I didn't know was Christian. They never said anything to me about being Christian. And even if they did, I wouldn't have wanted to talk to them anymore. But they were telling me that my daughter was with this Jesus person now. Okay? So as I said, I was either going to drink myself to death or I was going to find out who this Jesus person was. So, okay, well, let's try the Jesus person first. I can always do the other one. So I talked to several different people, including my sister-in-law, who had taken Kelly to church and kind of introduced her to Jesus. And she was telling me the same thing, but they said, where you find out about who God is, you got to get a Bible. Okay, I can do that. There's a Christian bookstore just down the street, the one on Tennessee. So then I got the Bible, and I started reading it. I had to find out where to start, because I didn't know anything about it. It's the first time I ever picked up a Bible at 43 years old. So I started reading it, and what I read in there, starting in the Gospels in particular, I got to Mark chapter 13, verse 9 and 10, where the disciples were telling people not to bring their children to Jesus because it was bugging him. And Jesus rebuked them and said, no, of such is the kingdom of heaven. It's children. That was an impactful verse for me. Because throughout the Bible, it's telling me that Kelly's with Jesus. That's what I'm reading. But unfortunately, the person that I identified with most as I was reading the Bible was Thomas. I was a doubter too. So I started hearing about this people telling me at Bible stories at service that the Bible is true throughout from end to end. I was very happy to hear that because I was hoping that it was. But at one time, since I identified with Thomas, I asked God, oh, well, it's a good story and I really hope it's true, but is it true? So I gathered that there's this group of stuff that's written about the Bible being true and a lot of experts talking about it being true. I said, okay, well, I need to talk to them because if I'm going to do this, if I'm not going to go drink myself to death, I need to know that this Christ thing is true. So I went back to the Bible store, and I didn't expect them to have some book that would take on both sides. I expected them to be Christians and being closed-minded about it because that's what I'd heard. But I walked in looking for a book, and there on the display was this book called Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. Okay, well, that seems like what I want. He's going to make a case for this Jesus person, and I guess I'll pick it up and read it. So I bought the book. How many guys know about it? I'm sure you do. It's a pretty popular book. But it's a book by Lee Strobel. And what it's about, I'll do in brief. The book's about Lee Strobel and his wife, and they're having a pretty good time of things. They have a couple of kids. Lee Strobel says his life's going pretty well, although he admits to waking up several times in an alley drunk, waking up after drunken night, waking up in the snow. That was his idea of a good life. him and his wife, he was an atheist, his wife was agnostic, but they were getting along just fine. Until the point where a lady that's near their house invites her to church. She starts going to church regularly and gets saved. That was not something Lee Strobel was very happy about. He threw a fit. He decided, okay, you know what I'm going to do? He's an attorney. He's the legal editor of the Chicago Sun-Times, so he's relatively famous. And I'm just going to go out and I'm going to wipe this whole Jesus stuff off the map. And then my wife will give up on this stupid stuff where she's probably going to not like me to let me drink anymore. Sounded familiar. So as I read through this, as he starts reading through the book, he starts going out to experts. So N.T. Wright, he's an expert on the New Testament. And N.T. Wright starts talking, answering his questions about things. And he starts looking at some other people. He talks to William Lane Craig. And William Lane Craig's you guys know him maybe. He's a good apologist. Anyway, Lee Strobel's talking to him. And he keeps giving him, and William Lane Craig keeps giving him all these answers and all these answers and all these answers. Finally, he just says to Strobel, he says, well, how much evidence do you need? So Lee now decides, okay, that's good point. But I need to go. I need to find out one more thing. This whole crucifixion thing, I need to know whether this actually happened. So he decides, okay, I understand that the American Medical Association actually did a study on this whole crucifixion thing. So he goes there and he doesn't read about it. He goes there, he finds the guy that wrote the paper, and he wants to interview him. So he's being sarcastic, as Lee Strobel usually was at that point. And he says, okay, tell me about the crucifixion. Tell me about this spear thing and water coming out and all the rest of it. What is all that about? And the guy said, well, you're being sarcastic about it, but I'll tell you straight right now, that's exactly what should have happened if he was crucified and if he had a spear stuck into his side. What would come out would be something that looked like water. So Lee Strobel went home and he went down to his basement. He was keeping board on each side on what's going on. How many of the answers he's got for each side. Atheism and theism. Christ and atheism. And he decides the list for the evidence for Christ is overwhelming. And he finally gives up and says, okay, I'm sold. That's been part of my repair. I told you guys that there was broken. I was broken at that point. But that book and the Bible telling me where Jesus was, those things were helping me be repaired. Repaired from where I was. So you can see I'm still not completely repaired yet, but it's getting better. That was happening. That happened in '99. So I've been able to get better over that. So as I talked about the fiery darts, when you're about ready to maybe have something you can do for the Lord, the fiery darts start. Now that was my third marriage. That one didn't go so well. She wasn't a Christian. She wasn't even divorced by the time I started dating her. God told me over and over again, don't go with this girl. Don't do this. Of course, I ignored him. So one of the first things that happened with this lady that I married was we went to the San Bernardino County Fair. I tell you this just to show you that God is with you no matter what you do, even stupid stuff that he tells you not to do. And you just go ahead and do it anyway. He still stays with you. So we went to the San Bernardino County Fair, and she comes in. The first thing we see is this hypnotist, the one that gets everybody up on stage and act like idiots. She said, okay, I want you to go up there and tell me whether this actually works or not. Okay, so I go up and I talk to the hypnotist, and I say, okay, I want to be on your panel next time. I said, okay, just raise up your hand and I'll pick you. So the whole thing starts, and she picks me. I go up there. She gives us the rules. She said, if this doesn't work for you, then just raise your hand and I'll let you go back. And I told my wife then that I'd give her a signal whether this was actually working. So she does all the the praying and stuff, close your eyes, listen to me, and all the stuff that she was doing didn't have any effect on me. But everybody else, it had an effect on. They're up there acting like idiots, and I'm standing there watching them. I tell you all this because when it was done, and she finally let me get off the stage, I'm walking out of there with my wife by my side, and we're talking about this and that, and there's this guy that appears in front of me. I turn around, and he's standing right in front of me. And he says, "What are you doing? Don't you know what that's about? You're a Christian. You can't be going up and doing that kind of stuff. That's demonic." And I look down at my shirt. I look around. How does this guy know I'm a Christian? So I turned to my wife and I said, "Were you talking to this guy about me being a Christian? Did you tell him that I was?" She said, "No, I don't know anything about him. I didn't talk to him at all." I turn around, this guy's gone. I go looking for him to try to talk to him, and he's gone. I can't find him. I believe that was an angel. The Bible says sometimes they entertain angels. I think the angel came to me and said, "Don't do stupid stuff, Kelly. You're a Christian now." It was one of the events. My wife at the time was sleeping around quite a bit. She had decided to have a relationship with a friend of mine who moved up north. I won't say where at, but he was up north. And I decided that I was going to go up there and I was going to get her back. Why I'd want to do that, God's trying to show me that I wouldn't want to be that anyway, but stupid me. But as I said, God's with us even in those times when it's not so great. We're doing stupid stuff. God's still with us. So I'm on an empty highway in Vegas, in Utah, out in the middle of nowhere. There's not a car coming to me. There's not a car coming from behind me. And the song comes on by Mercy Me called, oh boy, the song forgets my name now, but it talks about seeing Jesus' face. And I say to myself, there's just me in the car, "I'd love to see your face, Jesus." And at this point, I had started to realize God's voice. And God said to me, "Look up." And there in the sky was Jesus' face. I was stunned, shocked that I actually got a chance to see his face. And it's the face that's on Daniel's shirt, Shroud of Turin's face. That was the face that was in the sky. I was stunned, shocked. But I say that just because God's always with us. Even when we're doing stupid stuff, God's still with us. So she broke up with this guy, that friend of mine that she decided to go up there with. She broke up with him and came back down. Now it's just my life's a mess. It's bad. I had fiery darts shot at me all the time. So I tell you all this stuff just to show you the events that happened to me, to show that we are God's and he's going to stay with us. So I came home one day when she was back down from doing what she does. Came home, turned around the corner, hoping that her car wasn't there. So I pulled up, parked my driveway. She's not there, and I'm happy because when she was there was nothing but a nightmare. And I go in and sit down in the middle of my living room, and I'm sitting there just wondering what the heck to do. And God's voice comes to me again and says, "You had enough?" So, well, actually, yeah, I have had enough. At that point, I have to tell you guys, at that point she had filed for divorce from me, and we were about a year into the divorce proceedings. But I wanted to see if God really wanted me to do this. So Pastor Bob was holding prayer meetings. They're called Afterglow. He was holding those. And I decided I needed to know whether or not I can end this thing and just be done with it. Be done with the fiery darts that are being thrown at me. And there was this prayer meeting, so I figured, okay, I'll go to a prayer meeting and see if God will talk to me again, because he had been talking to me. So I go to this prayer meeting with Pastor Bob and a guy by the name of Daryl Luttrell. So a lot of you guys probably know him. And it's just an afterglow. So afterglows, this one, Bob just said, "Bow your heads. We're going to do pray. That's all we're going to do is pray. And see if God will speak to you on what you're supposed to do." So this is perfect, because this is what I need. So we're praying, and I'm just saying, just tell me if I can do this, God, because I want to be done with this. But I don't want to do something you don't want me to do. So that's what I was praying. Daryl had a couple answers for prayers, and then he said, there's somebody here looking to make a decision. And God wants you to know that he's okay with the path you want me to go on, that you want to go on. He's okay with that. That sounds like interesting, but the rest of it that Daryl said was again shocking, like the face that I saw in the sky. He said, just so the person that I'm talking about knows about this decision that God's okay with, just so you know who it is, your sister was out this weekend and she wanted you to pull in so she could get some chapstick. And that's precisely what happened. So that was another one when God decided that he was going to stick with me, tell me that he's around even though I'm doing stuff stupid and the fiery darts are shooting at me. So at that point, the divorce did end, and things were actually pretty good at that point. I was happy, I was single, and the darts were less often, but God was still around. And I'd like to tell you just one more of the times when God appeared, did some stuff for me, because God will walk with you. When you are with him, he's walking with you. You're not with him. But when he has something for you to do, like Charlie was talking about, debates and things like that, he's around with you then too. I know you guys know that, but I just talk about it. So I started doing debates, and it was out of the ministry that I had on market night. I'd been there for doing that ministry for 12 or 13 years, just talking to atheists about God, or whoever would come up and talk, I would talk to them about God. And there was a guy that came, they set up their booth, an atheist booth, this guy by the name of Phil, there was down the street from me. And me and him started talking, but we were talking gently. It wasn't any big adversarial thing. It was pretty calm. We'd talk about, he'd give me his ideas why God doesn't exist. And I would talk to him why he gave that they did exist. So he said to me, he said, well, if I set up something with the atheist group in Riverside, would you come and sit down and talk with us about God? And God assigned me to do this. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So we set up these booths, and we had a few different encounters with, a few different debates with different people. And finally he said, okay, I've got this astronomy college professor from UC Riverside that I want to have you debate. At that point, I'd debate anybody. I didn't care. So we started the debate, and as we got there, I walked in, and there was this guy sitting there with his shopping cart empty, all of his stuff scattered all over the table. I said hi to him as we went by. He said hi. I went inside, talked to the guys inside that were setting things up, tried to shake the hand of the guy that was the audio guy like Daniel's doing, and he wouldn't shake my hand. Me and him got into some discussions that were kind of heated, so he didn't want to shake my hand anymore. But anyway, it was about ready to start, and I had to go to the bathroom, so I went to the bathroom and came back, and God started talking to me again. And he said, I'll go over and talk to the homeless guy. Well, I'm saying, okay, God, this thing's about ready to start, and he's going to be late. Kelly, just go over and talk to the homeless guy. Okay. So I went over. It's a hot day. It's in the summertime. So I talked to him. I said, well, you want to come inside? We're going to have a little discussion about some stuff. It's free. There's some water inside that's cold. It's hot out here. If you want to come in and sit down with us, you might enjoy it. He said, okay, yeah, I will. So he comes in and sits down. So the debate starts, and the college professor gets to go first. And he starts talking about some stuff. And I'd heard most of their excuses. Guys, atheism doesn't have any excuses that are very good. They don't have anything. But I sat and listened. Till he got to a particular point, he wanted to prove the fact that the information that resides, the instructions that reside in DNA, that could have came about without an author. And his excuse was, I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but this is one of the atheist excuses. A million monkeys typing away on a million typewriters for a million years is going to produce War and Peace, anything else you want. So this was his idea that he put out for debate. And he goofed, because I had read a lot about this, and one of the guys that's a good apologist that I listened to and read about had a very good response for this one. And I told him, I said, well, sorry, pal, but you don't get the typewriter. So what? I said, you don't get the typewriter. That's a design product that has a coded information system on it, and you don't get that for your random experiment, because it's not random. That's a design product, and you're introducing a design product into a supposed random explanation. He stared at me for a minute, realizing that he had goofed. And then he said, well, what about if tree branches fell out of the sky onto the ground and it formed the shape of an E? This was his answer. I just chuckled. But then he came back to me, and this is the reason why I'm telling you this story. He came back at me and he said, well, have you read this particular book? He gives the name. It's some obscure book that at UC Riverside, and it's about a computer that they had, the computer that supposedly had given a solution for this particular problem, in that that this could actually happen. Instructions could actually come around without an author. I had never read this book before, but as soon as he said that, the guy that I invited in from the outside, he was sitting up here close like you guys were, started almost jumping up and down, raising his hands over his head like this. Finally, Phil comes up and says, well, usually we wait until after the session's over before we ask questions, but do you have something you wanted to say? And the guy says, yeah, I've got something I'd like to say. Can I say it now? And he said, yeah, sure, go ahead. He turned to the college professor and said, you're not telling the story. You're not telling the true story about that book. That book, the computer was programmed to only look for evolutionary pathways to getting instructions. So your example doesn't hold up to water. I don't know how you guys thought about that right now, but this guy was someone that I didn't expect to be able to contribute at all. He was homeless, had my own idea about homeless, whether he was going to be able to contribute or not. I had no idea he would be able to do that. But it ended. I had a better answer for one of the things. At that point, he turned to me and said, well, if you really want me to prove God doesn't exist, come to my astronomy class and I'll show you that God's ridiculous. And what I should have said at that point, I regret it till now. What I should have asked him was if the Million Monkeys was the one that produced his textbook that he was going through. But that's not what I said. What I said was if I was going to go to class, it certainly wouldn't be yours. That was not the good thing to say. I should have said the other one. But after the whole thing was over, I came up to Phil and I said, Phil, and I told him what happened. I said, Phil, do you understand what just happened here? Do you understand that God just intervened like he will for me, and he's done often for me? He intervened here when I had no clue about this book this guy was bringing up. I didn't have a clue about it. But God brought this guy that did know the book and set him right in front of me and told me to go talk to him, to get him to come in so I wouldn't look like a fool and not have answers. So at that point, guys, that's kind of my story. That's and I didn't say this, but all those things that I was talking about, once I came to faith, God was repairing me from damage that was brokenness. He was repairing me all the way around the way. Yeah, he produced everything I asked him to do. When I needed a book that said something about his factual existence, he showed me which one that was. When I needed to get out of the marriage that was a horrible mess, fiery darts all the time, he got me out of that too. Showed me stuff, revealed stuff to me that I wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And he's just with me all along every step of the way. And I know he is with you guys too. So I'm just out here to encourage you guys about that and see how it goes. So that's it, guys.